Okay, so this is going to have to serve as a rudimentary part 2 to my rudimentary attempt at a critique of the relativist position. So I'm going to try to take it a level deeper. So I'm going to posit that this debate is actually about a disagreement about the nature of the underlying reality. Okay, so Anakantavad made a comment clarifying his position to my last video, and I'll just point out that in one sentence he says, "There is no correct way to perceive the truth." Is that true? You know, it's difficult for someone in the relativist position to have any type of conversation at all, because everything they say I can just dismiss out of hand as ridiculous. They can't make any points, and I can't make any points to them. It's difficult to have dialogue. He also says, and there is no correct way to describe it. Is that true? It seems like you're making an assertion which is based on a claim that there is a truth. That you're trying to inform me of something that is true, and that thing that is true is that there is no way to perceive the truth, and there is no correct way to describe the truth. Well, either that statement is true or it's false, and I can just dismiss it out of hand as ridiculous nonsense. And that's really the main argument against relativism, and that's the argument that Aristotle came up with, which is that you annihilate the possibility of reason. You annihilate the possibility of reasoning with each other and reasoning with yourself. But the thing is, what happens, just like in this comment here that Anakantavad made, is the contradiction is just ignored. You utilize the absolutes, you utilize the concept of truth, even as you are arguing against the concept that there are correct ways to perceive the truth, and that there is a correct way to describe the truth. You're saying there is no correct way to perceive the truth. There is no correct way to describe the truth. And in making those statements, you are establishing that a truth exists in making such a statement. So anyways, so that's just kind of a side note. That's kind of a part of the critique for sure. But then he goes on to say that Western thinking relies on absolutes. That is fine, provided you are willing to accept the problems of just insisting on absolutes that may not even exist. Assuming identity, non-contradiction, and the excluded middle may be necessary, but that doesn't make them true. If logic is meaningless without the three classical rules of logic, which I don't think is the case, is that a reflection on Western logic, or is it a reflection of the underlying reality? So here's the level deeper I want to take it. So this underlying reality that Anakantavad is referring to here, I think the debate between absolutism and relativism is actually a debate over the nature of the underlying reality. So he asked the question, if logic is meaningless without the three classical rules of logic, is that a reflection on logic, or is it a reflection on the underlying reality? And I am claiming that it is a reflection on reality itself, not just on logic. And Anakantavad seems to disagree with that. I'm not sure, but I think what is really going on here is that this underlying reality, I think that the relativist is conceiving of the underlying reality as analog, and the absolutist is conceiving of the underlying reality as digital. The difference here, so analog is like smooth, continuous, no discrete parts. It's just a smooth, continuous field. The digital conception of the underlying reality is that it is discrete. And so, like in physical reality and physics, there's the idea, or there's the theory that we exist in a virtual reality, and a lot of people claim that it's not a falsifiable claim, but it is a falsifiable claim because all you would have to do to prove that we don't live in a simulated virtual reality is to find one thing about physical reality that is not computable, which is to say analog rather than discrete. So say if like space-time was analog, it turns out, which is smooth and continuous, then that's not computable, which means it can't be a computer simulation, it can't be a digital information system. It would have to be something else, like a material objective reality rather than a virtual reality. The thing is, you have, when you look at space-time, you get Planck length, which is the smallest, it's like the pixel of reality itself. You can't get any smaller than the Planck length. And time comes in discrete chunks as well, which is Planck time. So you can't get any smaller than these discrete digital chunks of time and space, which means that it is computable and it is digital in a way. But that's not to say that the physics, like the physics of the reality that we experience ourselves existing within, is the underlying reality we're actually talking about. But you just using that as an example, there is a possibility of debate, which in the case of physics seems to be resolved, which is that it is discrete and digital. It's not continuous and analog. And this relativist versus absolutist debate seems to be about pretty much the same thing, because if it is the case that the underlying reality of things is analog and continuous, then there is no discrete right, wrong. There is no discrete true, false. Everything is melding into everything else, and there are no absolutes. Everything is relative. So the absolutist disagrees with that and is saying that no, actually it is discrete and digital. There are absolute right and wrongs. There are absolute truths and falsities. And I think this is reflected in the fact that thought itself, reason itself, logic cannot happen unless you have these three rules of thought, laws of thought. And I think all that those laws of thought are really doing is outlining binary digits. So it's just outlining bits, which is the basic unit of information. So a bit is an on or off, a true or false, a yes or no. There is no in-between state of a bit. And information itself requires that you have this binary dichotomy, or else there is no information, because kind of going back to Aristotle, it's necessary that a term or a symbol has a meaning, a singular meaning, a yes or a no, because otherwise it has an infinite number of meanings, which means that it's meaningless. It has no meaning at all in that case, which makes reason impossible and annihilates all possibility of thought and logic and rationality, and even with ourselves and others and all that stuff. It's all annihilated if that's not the case. And the same is true with information. You don't have any information unless you have this binary yes-no framework on which it is based. You have to have bits, or else you have no information. And that is a digital, discrete thing. So I think that's a deeper level of what's going on in this whole debate here. Anyways, of course, this is called rudimentary for a reason. It's because I'm working these things out as I go. I'm making it up as I go along. But anyways, that's the track I'm headed down at the moment. Of course, commentary and feedback is appreciated. Of course, thanks.